All right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is Daily Vlog 2025, number 126. And today, a slight update on yesterday. Feeling better. Disassociation feels like it's getting lesser, so it's a good thing. So anyone that might have been worried after yesterday's episode, things are slowly getting better. Now, to the real reason we are here. Today, I want to talk about exploring the vast and dangerous wilderness outside of the safe home city. Yeah, we're going to talk about West Marches. So, drink. Fun part about the disassociation going away. Remember how I said like I was feeling really sick, but it felt like someone else was sick and I was feeling it for him? Now, I just feel really sick. So orange juice helps. And again, before anyone tells me it shouldn't, and that highly acidic food should make nausea worse, I already know that, but my brain doesn't. So stop. Doesn't matter if it actually helps. My brain thinks it does, and that's all that matters. All right, so I was scrolling Reddit, as one with no future does, and found a post in r/D&D, which is a veritable treasure trove of interesting ideas and really, really bad takes from just horrible people. But this one kind of sparked an interest. And it started off, and this is one of my favorite things that happens on r/D&D all the time. It's like, hi, I've never played D&D, but I have this idea about D&D. And normally, it turns into them basically saying, what if D&D wasn't like a bunch of people like dressing up in costumes and like hitting each other with foam swords? What if it was actually just like sitting down at a table and like just kind of like telling stories together? And anytime there was like a something that we're not sure what would happen, we would just use like a random number generator to figure out if it worked or not. And just to make sure everything was on the up and up, we would just elect one person whose job was just to be the judge. And, you know, anytime something was kind of strange, the judge would just go, okay, this is what we're going to do. That sounds a lot more interesting than Dungeons and Dragons. And then it's an entire comment section going, you literally just described Dungeons and Dragons. Like, replace random number generator with a D20 and judge with Dungeon Master, and you've got Dungeons and Dragons. We actually don't dress up most of the time, and there are no foam weapons involved. That's LARPing. Which is still very, very cool. I have friends that do LARPing on a regular basis. If I could leave my house, I would love to go LARPing. It's just not my thing. But anyway, this particular question was, why is D&D so campaign focused? Why is the only way that you can play D&D to get a group of friends together and they have to meet every week to play the same adventure, and anytime someone can't make it, nobody gets to play? That seems like a really, really bad way to run something. What if, instead of having a set party, you could just have a bunch of different people, and then whoever was available to play that week would be able to play, and instead of this like set campaign that was based on the characters, it would be like just a world that you could explore. That sounds really, really fun. And then it was an entire comment section that just said, have you heard about the D&D Adventures League? And that was the thing that kind of blew my mind, because everybody was focusing on D&D Adventures League and Pathfinder Society and going, yeah, you're literally talking about an organized play campaign. And it took me like scrolling down halfway down the comments to have anybody mention a West Marches campaign. What's a West Marches campaign? Well, there's this dude, all right? His name is Ben something. What's Ben Robbins? There we go. His name is Ben Robbins. And in the year of our Lord, 2007, he changed the world. Ben Robbins, by the way, he's a game designer. He actually has quite a few different GM-less RPGs that he publishes. Microscope and Kingdom, I believe, are the two that he is best known for. But he has a bunch of other ones. In This World, Follow, Union, and then he's currently doing a playtest for a new version of, I think it's Microscope. Like a new style of Microscope. But basically, he creates these GM-less RPGs that I have a hard time specifically calling them RPGs because they're not, like, you're not playing, like in Kingdom, you build a kingdom with a bunch of other people, which is really, really cool, and it follows kind of most of the RPG tropes, but you're not playing a role. You are, to me, a lot of the stuff that he makes is much closer to, like, board games. Very, very good, and this is not me trying to shit on anything that Ben Robbins has done. Amazing game designer. But if you're picking up Kingdom thinking like, oh yeah, I'm going to make this really cool elf fighter, you're going to be really disappointed because that's not what Kingdom is for, and that's not what Microscope is for. But they are very, very interesting, fascinating kind of group storytelling games. And if we boil down Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs into just collaborative storytelling, then 100% these games fit into tabletop RPGs. They're just a very specific flavor of them. So anyway, back in the year of our Lord 2007, Ben made a post on his blog, which is called Ars Ludi, ARS space Ludi, LUDI. Or maybe it's Ars Ludi, just to avoid saying naughty words. And he wrote this article or this blog post called Grand Experiments West Marches. And it described this campaign that he ran for a few years. And it inspired an entire genre of role-playing games that are still not quite as popular today, but I do still know of a few people that run West Marches campaigns. And if you stick around to the end, you might hear something about that realm of things happening again eventually. But we'll get to that later. So, in a West Marches campaign, effectively what it is exactly what was described in that post. Instead of having a set party, you have anywhere between like 10 to 14-ish is what he described here. Anywhere between like 10 to 14-ish players that would randomly decide to go on adventures exploring this area called the West Marches. And we're going to go into the specifics of how a West Marches campaign runs in a little bit here, but that was the basic premise. And one of the more interesting things about the West Marches campaign is it was extremely player-driven. What I mean by that is GMs didn't schedule games. The players did. And the way that they figured it out was there was this big old map, and they would go, I want to go exploring here. Who wants to go with me? And then a bunch of people go, I'll go. And then they'll go, okay, we need to pick a date. And say, okay, on this date, we want to explore this area. And they would present that to a GM. And as long as the GM was free on that date, and it was far enough ahead of the current day that the GM had time to prep anything that wasn't already prepped, the game would go. And like I said, it inspired a ton of GMs from around the world to start running this very, very similar campaign because it solves one of the biggest problems that tabletop RPGs in general always have. They refer to it as a shortage of GMs. It is significantly easier to be a player than it is to be a GM. Does that mean that being a GM is the hardest thing in the world and only... No. I firmly believe anyone can be a GM, but it takes more work than being a player. That's just how it is. It's not a ton more work, but it does take more work than being a player. And so because of that, you will always have more players than GMs. It's easier to be a player than it is a GM, so you will always have more players than GMs. That's just how it works. With the West Marches campaign, a single GM is what happened here. A single GM could run 10 to 14 players effectively simultaneously, because what would happen is the players would decide on the parties. They would choose where they wanted to adventure, and then the GM would just have to do enough prep to be able to run that adventure, and they could sit back, and then the players would deal with everything else. And there's a few aspects that were specifically baked into this West Marches campaign that made that possible. That, again, when we start breaking it down, I'll talk about in more detail. But it was a really fabulous the thing. Like I said, people still do today. And people still talk specifically to Ben Robbins about West Marches campaign just because how quote-unquote revolutionary it was. Now, was the idea of not having a fixed partying kind of adventuring ad hoc created by Ben Robbins? No. Again, this is something like he actually ran his West Marches campaign starting in around 2001, ran it to about 2003. So it only lasted about 2 years. And before that, over a decade before, actually about a decade and a half before that, we had already seen the first organized play campaign, which worked in a similar but different manner. If you're not familiar with organized play campaigns are exactly that. They're a campaign that is organized so that anyone that wants to can play in this campaign. And originally, depending on what people were choosing to do in the adventures, it actually changed the lore of the world that you were playing in. The very first organized play campaign was set up by the RPGA, which was the precursor to the D&D Adventurers League. It was the Role Playing Game Association Network. It was just shorthand to RPGA. And that actually started in 1980. And it specifically started as a way to run competitive Dungeons and Dragons events at conventions. That's what the RPGA was known for. Well, in 1987, they started one of their first living campaigns. It was called The Living City. It was set in the Forgotten Realms, which is one of the reasons why the Forgotten Realms is as big as it is right now, because it was the first organized play campaign for Dungeons & Dragons. I believe it might have been the first organized play campaign that ever existed. If anyone wants to correct me on that, feel free to do that, because finding out the history of organized play campaigns is remarkably difficult. But it was definitely one of the most popular that have ever existed. It was one of the longest running. It ran from 1987 all the way to 2004. So while The Living City was going on, the original West Marches campaign was going on as well, completely isolated. I have no idea if Ben Robbins knew anything about The Living City, used it for inspiration, or if this is entirely something that he came up out of his own mind. If you read his blog post, he mentions nothing about The Living City or the RPGA or anything like that. So it's very, very possible. There's a term in copyright law called parallel thinking. And basically what that is if you are trying to accuse someone of copyright violations, one of the things that you have to do is you have to prove that they knew about the thing that you made, brain not working, the thing that you made and copied it. If you can't prove that they had any idea about the thing that you made, you can't prove that they actually copied it, even if the things are really, really similar. And they call that, if two people come up with basically the same idea, completely separate from each other, they call it parallel thinking, and that's 100% legal. Now, if they can show that you once listened to their song on the radio, or something like that, parallel thinking goes out the door. They go, no, 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 no. Even if it was subconscious, even if you only heard it once, there's a chance that you knew about this, and therefore you could have used that to create this thing that's virtually identical. So it's theoretically possible that the Wes March's campaign was a little bit of parallel thinking, or he could have taken inspiration from organized play campaigns. We don't know, and it really doesn't matter, because Wes March's a Wes March's campaign is different enough from an organized play campaign that they don't really do this as the same thing. But the idea behind it, and the reason why everybody said Adventurers League instead of talking about Wes March's, is very, very similar. You don't have a set party. A lot of times you don't have a set a day that you play or anything like that. It's just when people are available and a GM is available, you play. And then if we go through the history of organized play campaigns, eventually after the Living City went away, they introduced Living Greyhawk, which actually started in 2000. So the Living City and Living Greyhawk were actually going side by side for about 4 years. And then Living Greyhawk ended in 2008. And then we had the Living Forgotten Realms, which returned organized play back to the Forgotten Realms, which went from 2008 to 2014, basically the entirety of D&D 4th edition. And then in 2014, we had the D&D Adventurers League. Now, in 2010, they had the D&D Encounters program, which wasn't a living campaign, but it basically, the Adventurers League kind of absorbed living campaigns and the D&D Encounters program into the Adventurers League. So, done with that, let's talk about Wes March's. So, the fascinating thing about a Wes March's campaign is when it's organized well, it literally is a self-sustaining D&D program. Whereas, like, again, I have run, let's see now, 1, 2, 3 official D&D campaigns, 2 of which are still running right now, and then an Open Legend campaign, and now a Cypher System campaign. So I've run 5 long-running campaigns. Right now, the shortest running campaign I have has been going for just under 2 years. And the other ones are, I think, 5 to 6 years, and then we're getting close to, I think, 8 years on my other one. And my first campaign ran for about 7 or 8 years. So I understand how to run long-term campaigns. I'm very, very good at it. But all of those campaigns, I am the one that's driving it forward. I'm writing all the adventures. I'm working with every single player to kind of establish their backstories and then come up with ideas that include their backstories in the adventures and all these other really interesting things, but I'm the one that's running it. A Wes March's campaign is run by the players. And the GM is really just there to act as a judge and create some situations for the players to deal with. They're not writing plot. They're not working with players to build in their backstories or anything like that. They are literally just there to sit back and watch the players interact with this world that they've built. And so because of that, as long as your players are engaged and interested, the campaign can go on as long as it needs to. Now, again, the original Wes March's campaign lasted a grand total of about 2 years, 2001 to 2003. So when we compare it to even something like Critical Role, you know, their first campaign was what, like 3 or 4 years, something like that. And then your next campaign's got a little bit longer. And they were playing 4 hours. They were playing 4 hours a week, every week, with a few rare exceptions, and then the random, you know, convention game or something like that. So they were playing a shit ton to get all those campaigns done. Wes March's campaigns, by their very definition, can actually be significantly shorter or can last for a very, very long time. So let's start defining what is a West Marches campaign. And again, we're going to go directly from the original source. I'm going to have a link in the description to Ars Ludi, specifically to the first blog post called Grand Experiments, West Marches. But at the bottom of that post, he has a grand total of, I think, what is it, 5? Yeah. He has a grand total of 5 blog posts describing West Marches campaign specifically. And then he has 3 kind of follow-up posts after people, years later when people have contacted him and asked him about different things. But all of those are linked at the bottom of this first blog post. So if you actually want to get it from the source, which I've read through all of them today, from one game master to another and from one game designer to another, one of us is significantly more successful in that field than the other. I'll let you guys decide which. Ben Robbins knows his shit really well. Like, there's a scene in The Patriot where Mel Gibson's character, they've just taken a shipment. They've just hijacked a shipment that was going to General Cornwallis. And in that shipment were General Cornwallis's war diaries. And Mel Gibson's character is reading through them. And after he's done, he goes, "I've been in the mind of a genius." And that really was kind of what I felt when I was reading through this, because it's so... Ben understands so much about player motivation and game design, and specifically how to encourage players to advocate for themselves. And this is all stuff that I had to learn in management in order to effectively run a business. And so a lot of the stuff that he talks about in here, I learned in different ways. I learned from a management perspective. He learned from running games. But they are really solid psychological principles that are extremely effective in running any type of organized group, whether it's an organized, whether it's a D&D group or a supermarket. A lot of the stuff he talks about in here, and that was one of the things that was like, wow, this is really, really good. And it's obvious that this is not stuff that he learned in a book and then applied to this. This is all stuff that he either inherently just understood or learned after a lot of trial and error, which is how most people become smart. So it's really, really good stuff. Read it over. Let's talk about what is a West Marches campaign. So, the very basics of a West Marches campaign is... You do not have a set party. You generally have a bunch of players. Some of them may have multiple characters that they're running. And the players decide, we want to go adventuring on this date, at this time. They find a GM to do it. They do it. They get to keep their spoils. Rinse, repeat. That is the very basics of a West Marches campaign. Now, if that is the only thing you put into your West Marches campaign, it's probably going to fail, because there's certain aspects that Ben did that caused his campaign to run significantly better. That I don't think a lot of people consider those official parts of a West Marches campaign. But if you want it to work the way Ben's did, you really need to. So we're going to go through and talk about the things that he decided. And again, he's the one that created this style adventuring, so he gets to decide. It was one of the weirdest, side note, it was one of the weirdest conversations I ever had when I was in business. I was working for a company, it doesn't exist anymore. After the pandemic, they went belly up. Probably because of what I'm about to tell you. I was working for this company, and I was in business school at the time, and I'd just taken a business law course. And I realized that what they called their store managers really weren't store managers. We were basically just key holders. We were key holders that got a percentage of the profits of the store, but we were still just key holders because of the stuff that we did in the store, and the responsibilities and authority that we actually had. There was a regional manager that was the actual store manager. They just were a store manager of multiple stores. However, because we weren't real managers, we were salaried employees, and salary, just being salaried does not exempt you from overtime pay. Even if you're salaried, for every hour above 40, they're still required to pay you time and a half. And there's a way that you figure out exactly what your hourly wages as a salaried employee and things like that. So anyway, I realized this, and I realized that if someone was to report them, this could be a hundreds of millions of dollars lawsuit. And just to cover my bases, I anonymously called up, because I wasn't trying to get the business in trouble. I anonymously called up the Department of Labor in my state and just went, hey, I just need some advice on this. I work for this company, and I explained the whole thing, and the Department of Labor person flat out said, yeah, that's illegal, and we could investigate them for that. Thank you, click. I shoot an email up to the higher-ups in the company and go, hey, we're violating labor laws. We need to get ahead of this. If we fix it before we get in trouble for it, we don't have to pay any penalties or anything like that. And as long as we tell the employees, hey, by the way, we realized we were doing something wrong. This is what we're doing to fix it. Any employee that takes the thing that we're doing to fix it, whether it's back paying them or giving them a bump to their hourly wage or something like that, that's considered them acknowledging that what was done has been fixed. It's significantly more complicated than that, but what ended up happening is I went from the kind of golden child, because I was really, really good at what I did, and the store that I was a manager in training. So you would train for like 6 months, I think it was 3 to 6 months, something like that, and then you would, or maybe it was 6 to 9 months, something like that. Anyway. And then after you learned everything, they would give you your own store. And it was already looking like I already had a couple different stores, regional managers that were looking at me to run stores in their area. So I was the golden child. The particular store I was in had been doing really, really poorly for a long time. As soon as I got in there, not only was it running better, it was making really good profit and stuff like that. And as soon as I sent that email, it went from me being the perfect golden child to I was written up instantly. I was under investigation, and I had to have a meeting with the boss of my boss to figure out my future with the company. And I instantly contacted the lawyer, had them write me up a letter acknowledging illegal retaliation. But unfortunately, at that time, I had a nervous breakdown and my mental health tanked. That was the last job I was ever able to work. So anyway, they don't exist anymore. But the reason I'm telling this story, I remember telling the people involved, I'm like, no, we're violating labor laws. They're like, no, we're not. I said, the Department of Labor says we're violating labor laws. Well, they don't understand what's going on. They're wrong. And I'm like, they make the rules. They can't be wrong. They're the ones that get to decide what the rules are, so they're always right. And that's when they tried to fire me. Anyway, so back to West Marches. The way that Ben describes the West Marches campaign. And these are right from West Marches, running your own campaign, or running your own. Make the town safe and the wilds wild. The basics of the West Marches is there's this strong fortified town, and it is the westernmost civilized place, or settled place in this particular world. Everything to the west of it is untamed wilderness. And nothing happens in the town itself. The town is simply a place to find adventurers. All the dangerous, interesting stuff happens in the West Marches. So whenever you're in the town, you're completely safe. The second you step outside of the town, danger. Always, 100%. The town has guards and everything like that. They are almost draconian in how they deal with bad stuff, so bad stuff doesn't happen in the town. But the second you step outside the town, everything is legal. The second thing, keep NPC adventures rare or even better, non-existent. The way to make a player-run campaign player-run is let the players be the only interesting people in the world. The only adventurers are the players. And the reason why is, again, this town is the westmost settlement of a large civilization. Everything to the east is safe and great, so any smart person would go east to make their living. Or just stay in the town, because again, the town is completely safe. As soon as you step to the west side of town, death and danger are everywhere. Only crazy people would do that instead of doing literally any other job. It's effectively like having a town next to an oil rig. And so on the west side of town, the only job you can have is working the oil rig. And if anyone is unaware, working like an offshore oil rig or oil drilling platform is incredibly dangerous and terrifying. It is a terrifying line of work. They have videos of it on YouTube. It is absolutely nonsense. And so if your choice is super, super dangerous, but relatively well-paid job, oil workers get paid decently. They're not millionaires, but they get paid well above the average wage of most Americans. And the reason why is it's a nonsense, terrifying job. Or you can work literally any other job that's got like a 401k and you don't have to worry about massive machinery cutting you in half accidentally, or explosions or fires happening in the middle of the ocean, or falling into the ocean and drowning. Like, that's never going to happen if you're at a call center. So that's one of the things in there. Make the NPCs the adventure. It also gives you the added bonus of the unexplored wild areas. You never really have to explain why there's this huge collection of treasure in a dungeon, because no one has been there before. Like, the people that originally made the dungeon were, but they were long gone. They're gone long time ago. So the reason that there's just this big old pile of treasure there is no one's been dumb enough to go in this part of the world where they could die. And then the third part of building it is called Build Dungeons with Treasure Rooms, Locked Rooms, Pockets of Dangers. One of the things that he talks about in this thing is the idea that the West Marches campaign should be reusable. And what he meant by that is not so much that, oh, I'm going to run this exact same campaign for another group of players. No. What it is, and that's what this particular point talks about, is in every single dungeon that you create, there should be an area that the players can't get to. A really, really complicated lock that they just, for whatever reason, can't roll high enough to pick. An area full of zombies there's just enough of them that there's no way the players are going to be able to deal with that. Hidden, a crack in a wall that shows that there's treasure on the other side, but they can't figure out how to get there with their current gear. Something that encourages the players to come back someday when they're a higher level. And he talks about in here, did players do this? Very rarely did they actually come back on purpose. But it gave them a motivation of, oh, there's more to this than I thought. And there should be areas in dungeons and places that are just made for higher level players that are telegraphed enough that the players can know, oh, this is a bad idea, without just getting TPK'd. So the running it portion, that's, you've built it, you've come up with everything you need. The running it portion, you need to appear passive, is the way that he describes it. And he goes into uh, in a later article, he actually talks about the idea that his version of a West Marches campaign, excuse me, his version of a West Marches campaign could not have worked in any previous version of Dungeons and Dragons. He ran it in 3rd edition, not even 3.5, because 3.5 came out after his campaign was over. But he ran it in 3.0, and his justification, which I don't 100% agree with, but the idea behind it is solid, is in 3rd edition, all the rules were so set in stone that players themselves could figure out what they could and couldn't do just by reading the player's handbook. And that was one of the other things, one of the other rules that he had in here was when they were playing the game, the only rule for character creation was player's handbook. They couldn't use any other supplements. They couldn't homebrew anything. It was all, if it's in the player's handbook, it works. The only thing that he didn't allow were things like Tanglefoot bags or sun rods, because he didn't like that magic as a technology thing, which again, I disagree with, but to each their own. So other than those very, very minor things not being available, if it's in the player's handbook, it's allowed. And what that effectively does is it creates a defined set of rules that allow the players to make their own decisions and come up with their own plans without having to hope the DM rules in their favor. Now, in my opinion, that is a little antithetical to Dungeons and Dragons in general, and TTRPGs in general. It's one of the reasons why I generally refer to 3rd edition as a video game, because it was. Because 3rd edition had a rule for everything. The way that video games work is the designer of the game has to come up with every possible thing that the players could do and tell the computer how to deal with that. And if the players ever do something that the designers didn't intend for them to do, it literally breaks the game. And so 3rd edition has so many rules and so many things that it's effectively a video game. And so because of that, the players have the ability to know exactly what they can and can't do, because there's a rule for fucking everything. But what that leads to is the players can get very, very in-depth of their plans. One of the things he talks about in these blog posts is how combat encounters would sometimes just turn into these large tactical discussions where one player will go, damn, I want to do this, but I don't see a way to do it. And then another player will go, well, what if you tried this, this, and this, and this? And another player would do that. And he specifically calls out the idea of, I hate coaching, which is basically where one player tells another player how to play their character. But the idea of players kind of sharing tactical knowledge is totally fine, as long as the initial player is the one that's kind of asking for help and no one is basically telling them, no, this is what you're supposed to do because this is how your character plays. But just basically going, oh, this is what the rules say and stuff like that. And it turned into a very, very interesting thing. But that was one of the things that allowed him as a GM to appear passive, because he was literally just running the game as rules is written. And so because of that, the players, anytime something happened, the players could go, oh, the rules state that this can happen. That makes perfect sense. There was never a situation where it goes, wait a minute, we weren't expecting that. How did that happen? No, everything, and it's only in the player's handbook. So all the other power creep and stuff like that happened with 3rd edition just in general didn't exist in this game. So the idea in a West Marches campaign, now you don't have to run it entirely like that, where everything is rules as written. Because again, in order to do that, you basically have to have a game like Third Edition or Pathfinder. You basically have to have a video game TTRPG, because it removes the ability for players to use abilities in unique ways that the rules don't specifically allow them to do. Which again, to me, is kind of a killer. But the idea of appearing passive, that is an essential part of the West Marches campaign. Again, the players are the ones that are driving the things. It's not the DM having them go through the story that he's written. It's the players making decisions on where to go, what they're going to do, who they're going to go with. And so the DM should appear passive. They should effectively be creating situations and then allowing the situations to resolve however the players decide to resolve them, not trying to resolve the situations to tell a certain story. And that's good advice for running games in general. The DM shouldn't be forcing players into telling the story that he wants to. The players should have ultimate say over what their characters do, and the GM should be passive. But a West Marches campaign requires kind of the ultimate in passivity, because the GM basically doesn't have almost any control over the narrative, whereas in a traditional campaign, the GM still has a lot of control over the narrative. They just can't be the only person controlling the narrative. Second thing, provide an easy lead to get new players started. Effectively, the thing that drives a West Marches campaign is competition, which we will talk about in a second here, and excitement. But they have to get a taste first. You know, the age-old idea. The first taste is free? Yeah. That's what we're talking here. So basically, whenever a new group of players would join, he effectively would give them a kind of vague treasure map. And that would be enough to get them to start exploring. And once they got a taste, they were hooked. But having that initial, when you're starting off a West Marches campaign, you have to have an initial call to adventure. And the idea of having some person in a tavern give you a quest really doesn't fit with a West Marches campaign. West Marches campaigns are about exploring the unknown and things like that. So having a treasure map show up is a really, really good thing. Or maybe having a gnoll hunting party get too close to town, and after dealing with them, they find something that hints that there's something more out there. Like maybe they find a little gold chess piece, and someone in town goes, "Oh my God, you know what? That actually looks like the gilded chess set of this king that lived centuries ago." You know, a lot of people said that, like, the whole value of that, because not only was this little golden pawn kind of cool, but when you started getting to, like, the king and queen, they had, like, sapphires and diamonds inscribed in them, and the gold was actually the black pieces. The white pieces were made of platinum. Yeah. And so by just having that thing of, oh yeah, I wonder if that's still out there somewhere, something like that might just be enough to go, did you say platinum chess pieces and sapphires and diamond? Guys, are you bored? Would you guys like to make a shit ton of money? Like, that would be really cool. So have an inciting incident, but it's not, oh, here is your quest, yon adventurers. Because again, the NPCs are the only, or the players are the only adventurers. So it's not like there's an adventuring guild that is constantly coming up with adventures for adventurers. Nope. This is something unique. The players are the only people that are dumb enough to do this. So, yeah. The next thing he mentions, the adventures in the wilderness, not the town. He specifically mentions how the term town game was a dirty word in the West Marches. Basically, interesting stuff happens in the West Marches. It doesn't happen in town. This is not a city-based campaign. The city is literally just there to be a place to rest, recuperate, and spend your money, and that's it. It's not to say you can't have interesting NPCs, but the NPCs should never be driving anything. They're just there to be a support system for the adventurers. Again, the thing about a West Marches campaign is the West Marches. He's talked specifically about let players take over. We'll go into that in just a second here when we talk about other aspects of it. But basically, the players are running everything. They are setting up the adventures. They are writing game summaries. They are actually the ones that are filling in details on the shared map, which we'll talk about in a second here. The players run this, and that's the reason why it lasted as long as it did. When there's one person running it, it's very easy for the players to kind of get disillusioned and get bored with it, or kind of take for granted how much work the game master is putting in, and therefore it kind of dies because the players aren't invested anymore. And then the next one, competition is what it's all about. This was the other thing that really drove the West Marches campaign as well as it did. There were two things that were really, really essential. I probably should have started with, but it makes sense to put them here, that made the West Marches campaign as addictive as it was. One, there was this giant shared map that every adventurer could look at to see all the different places they could go adventuring. And the way it was written into the lore is in the tavern where they all met. One of the tables was where adventurers would come to, and they would kind of like scratch into the table this very, very basic map. And over years and years and years, it went from just little scratches into a table to basically an engraved map that took up this entire table. And anytime something new was on there, an adventurer kind of scratch into the table. Oh, there's a keep here. There's a mound of spiders here. Stuff like that. And then they also had this other thing that was effectively required, which was game summaries. Basically, after an adventure was completed, one of the people involved in that adventure would write a summary and post it to the email chain. They did this all through an email chain back then. Posted to the email chain stating, hey, this is the stuff that we did, and these are the things that we found. And that would be the adventurers adding to the shared game map. And because this was done before the internet is the thing that it was, all these games were played in person. So Ben Robbins actually had a shared adventure map, which was just grid paper that was kind of taped together, that all the players were allowed to kind of add to and stuff like that. But he would bring that same map to every single adventure, and then he would scan it and upload it to the internet so that in between adventures, players could still see it. But it was entirely done by the players. And what that turned into is anytime a new game summary came up, everyone in the group would read it and realize, wow, not only did they do a really cool thing, but look at the cool shit that they got. I want that. And because, again, they were playing on a shared map, it meant that anyone that went to one of these places first had the chance to find all the good stuff. And once the players went there, because it's a shared campaign, that stuff was gone. The dungeon didn't restock itself with cool new items. It simply was gone. And so it created this sense of competition. Of, damn, they went somewhere and I wanted to go there. Well, maybe I'll find somewhere else that I want to go. And he specifically talks about the idea that there was a bunch of different like low level and then mid level and high level areas. So it was never there was always more places to explore than the players would ever have the time or ability to actually explore. So it wasn't in business and a bunch of other things. We refer to this as what's called a zero sum game, which is basically anytime somebody else gets something, you lose something, because the sum of everything in this particular system has to be zero. Zero sum games in general are extremely competitive because anytime somebody else does well, you do poorly by definition. You have to lose something in order for someone to win something. So, a West Marches campaign is not a zero sum campaign. There's tons of stuff out there, but there is that FOMO aspect. There's enough for everybody to find something, but anytime somebody explores a particular place, that's done. It doesn't mean that that dungeon can never be visited again, but those specific that specific feature of that thing is gone. And again, that's another reason why your dungeon should have players that or places that players can't get to, because when they write up their summary, other people can go, "Oh wow, yeah, you guys couldn't have done that, but we have some adventures that are higher level. We're totally going to go there and see what we can find in that part of the dungeon that you guys couldn't explore," and other stuff like that. But competition is what made the West Marches campaign as successful as it was, because any time somebody would go out and talk about the really cool stuff that they did, it would encourage other people. Damn, well, if they found out that in like a stinky goblin cave that was, a day's journey from the fort, well, there is this troll encampment that's on the map, or there's these ruins that are on the map that are also only a day away. I bet you we could find something equally as cool there. So kind of pushing this idea of friendly competition really made it as successful as it was. And then the last two things are just kind of management things. He mentions require scheduling on the mailing list or wherever you are using to kind of keep everyone in contact. One of the dangers of something like this is cliques are always going to form. And the danger of cliques is it ruins some of the competitive nature, because instead of every player trying to do their best to contribute to whatever group they're in so that their group can succeed, now you have particular groups with particular identities that are forming, and they're fighting against each other. And once you get, instead of a bunch of different people all realizing, hey, if we work together, we can do things, it turns into, well, my group is really strong and it's going to go out and do this stuff. And your group isn't going to get the things that my group does. And it does create a zero-sum game at that point very, very easily. The whole scheduling chapter is basically click busting, if we go for the union busting metaphor. Basically talk about ways to kind of encourage it to be a West Marches campaign. There are no set groups or anything like that. It is just random people that show up at a table. And then the final section is called Fear the Social Monster. And it's basically talking about, social stuff is going to come in. I'm just going to read this paragraph because it's such a good description of this problem, because this happens everywhere. Again, I used to do convention stuff. I used to run D&D programs for game stores and stuff like that. And social stuff always happens. So here it is. Fear the Social Monster. This is the big granddaddy or all warnings. I think it's supposed to be of all warnings. Even more so than many games, West Marches is a social beast. In normal games, players have an established place in the group. They know they're supposed to show up every Tuesday to play. They don't have to think about that or worry about whether they belong in the group. On the other hand, West Marches is a swirling vortex of ambition and insecurity. How come nobody replied when I tried to get a group together last week? Why didn't anybody invite me to raid the Ogre Cave? And so on ad infinitum. The thrilling success or catastrophic failure of your West Marches game will largely hinge on the confidence or insecurity of your player pool. Buckle up. And that really is the big thing. It's one of the reasons the scheduling aspect is so important, and the idea of mixing up the groups is so important. As soon as you start getting cliques, you can start getting that middle school drama of behind the scenes. Well, we're not going, anytime this person organizes an expedition, all of us just aren't going to go on that one because we don't like them. Stuff like that happens. We just saw it happen in the VTuber community. Stuff like that. And for anyone that doesn't know, this happens all the way up to Fortune 500 CEOs. This never goes away. As much as people claim, oh, this is high school stuff. No, high school is just where it's most visible because high schoolers are dumb and don't understand how to do it covertly. And they have no reason to. There are no ramifications for doing this shit in high school. You hurt somebody's feeling. When you get into the business world, they call it tortious interference of contract, and you can get hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars in penalties. That's a big deal. In high school, it's not, so you don't have to be smart about doing it. D&D is the same thing. Again, I worked the convention circuit, and if you don't think the convention circuit was cutthroat, little story, names are removed to protect the innocent and the guilty. I worked for convention, and it had been established for a few years at this point. I think it was on as like 6th or 7th, or it might have only been like its 4th or 5th year. But it's been around for a little bit. In Wisconsin, little board gaming conventions kind of pop up everywhere because this is where D&D started. We've got lots of them. There was a new convention that was just starting. It was in a different area of the state, but it was within an hour of where my personal convention was. This specific convention, in order to get their name out, instead of, and this is something that happens, conventions will buy booths in like the dealer's hall of other conventions to advertise, hey, in a month, our convention is going to be going. It's a common practice. And they would have giveaways and stuff like that to kind of justify them being in the dealer's hall. This particular convention did not buy a booth in the dealer's hall, which is perfectly fine. You don't want to pay effectively your competitor to advertise for your convention. It's perfectly fine. We're technically not competitors because they happened at different times of the year, but it's a convention, and if someone can only go to one convention a year, you now are competitors. So instead of buying a booth to sell merch and advertise their event, what they did is they just got a bunch of flyers and put them all up over the hotel that we were renting, including littering the bathroom with them. And it actually got us in trouble with the hotel because their janitorial staff did not like what these people were doing, because it was wrecking the hotel. And if you piss off, as a convention organizer, if you piss off one hotel, you are done, because the other hotels talk to each other. Just like in retail managers talk to each other. So you don't want to piss off. But it wasn't this convention, because the convention itself, I believe it was their first year that they had been running. So nobody knew about that convention, and they were in a city that was over an hour away. So they weren't going to get the bad rep. We were. And to this day, I I believe that they did it intentionally. And it actually worked because that convention is still going really, really strong. The convention that I worked for is still going as well, but this other one got real big, real fast. And then another story about drama, just because I can, and I like telling stories. There was a person whom, again, shall remain nameless, but they were associated with the Adventurers League before it became a part of Wizards of the Coast. The Adventurers League used to be its own third-party group that wasn't a third-party group, and that's why it's part of Wizards of the Coast right now. But they tried to pretend that it was. And I was a local coordinator for the Adventurers League. I had a regional coordinator who was an asshole and was very, very power hungry and was really, really bad at their job. Like, phenomenally bad. And when I came on, I already had like 4 or 5 years of management experience under my belt. I think at that point I was going to school for it as well. I knew a lot about how to run a business and how to run an organization and stuff like that. And so this regional coordinator every month would ask for feedback, mostly because he wanted people to tell him, "Oh, you're so amazing, you're so wonderful, and I love everything that you do." And I didn't do that. I would reply back with actual feedback. "Hey, when you did this, this is a really, really bad idea because of this management principle and this actual thing. And oh, by the way, doing this might actually violate labor laws, despite the fact that we don't work for you, quote unquote." It creates a situation where you could create what's called an implied employment contract. And that requires you to actually pay us and stuff like that. Things that you can't do, so maybe don't do this stuff. And he hated it. He vehemently despised me. And every single time, he would always ask for feedback, and I would always give it back. And I go, "Hey, by the way, if you would like, I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and just give you some pointers, because, again, this is what I do for a living." And he hated me, and he eventually fired me over it. So, again, I worked for a convention. And one of the things this convention did is we went out, and in the early days of the Adventurers League, we had the earliest day of the Adventurers League. One of the things that was really, really important in the Adventurers League was the 5 factions in Faerun: the Harpers, the Lords Alliance, the Order of the Gauntlet, the Emerald Enclave, and the Zentarum. When you created an Adventurers League character, you could join one of those 5 factions. And as you adventured, you would actually go up in rank. If you belonged to a faction, you would go up in rank with that faction, which gave you bonuses that you could use in-game. It was super cool. It was super interesting. They dropped it all after, I think, the 5th season, which was monumentally stupid. Anyway, each faction had its own emblem. And so what my convention did is we actually went to a print company and got basically like a flag of each faction printed on like heavy duty like foam board, so we could hang it in our D&D hall. And it looked really great. The regional coordinator that fired me from a volunteer position contacted Wizards of the Coast and told them, "Hey, these people are violating your copyright by printing copywritten materials and using it as their own without your permission. You should shut them down." Kid you not. And he was still a regional coordinator at this point for the Adventurers League. He isn't anymore. All the regional coordinators got fired when it got turned into, or I think the vast majority of them got fired because the higher ones were the ones that actually got absorbed into the company. And so he literally called up Wizards of the Coast and said, "Hey, they're violating copyright law. You should forbid them from being able to run D&D Adventures League games," which would have screwed over the convention because the Adventures League was a huge draw to the convention. We found out instantly because we were contacted by Wizards of the Coast, specifically the people that were writing the D&D Adventures League stuff, and they personally reached out to us and said, "Hey, we wanted to let you know somebody said that you guys were printing the emblems of the 5 factions, which that artwork is copywritten by Wizards of the Coast. We just wanted to let you guys know we've been planning on putting that into the public domain for a while now. We just haven't done it. So don't worry. Nothing is going to happen to you. As soon as we can, we're going to put it into the public domain. This was before Creative Commons is as big as it is. We're going to put it into the public domain so that anybody that wants to is allowed to use that in exactly the way that you guys are doing it. We love that you guys are doing it. Please keep doing it. Because that regional coordinator had actually gone in to our D&D hall and taken pictures of it to show proof that we were violating copyright law. So, yes, social stuff is a thing. And again, the only reason this regional coordinator wanted to shut down this convention is I worked for the convention and he didn't like me. That was it. And he was willing to screw over a convention that saw like 1,000 people a year. It wasn't a massive convention, but for Wisconsin, it was a decent sized one. It was one of the bigger ones. It wasn't like GaryCon or what's the other one? Gamehole Con is the other like real big one that happens in Wisconsin each year. And it definitely wasn't Gen Con or Dragon Con or any of those things like that, but it was big enough. Yeah, anyway. So, the other aspect, very long-winded way to get around this. This is only an hour-long video. I need a drink. Water. So, the other aspect of this West Marches campaign is that idea of the game summaries and the shared map. This is an essential part of a West Marches campaign. In order for the players to run the game, they have to have enough information to do that. So you can't just have, oh, here's the city and here's like 4 big things. No. Ben Robbins created this relatively detailed map that had different areas, and each area had an encounter level attached to it, so the players would know this area is more dangerous than this area. And he had landmarks and stuff like that written on there and other things. And that wasn't the only thing that happened. While players were adventuring, they could randomly find something that wasn't on there before. But there was enough on that map that the players could sit there and go, ooh, I bet something cool is in there, and go there. And then the player summaries, again, to get the players to really be invested. He talks about in one of these blog posts, he talks about how the player summaries originally were just kind of a bookkeeping thing, so everybody could be on the same page, so that you didn't have people going to the exact same place that another party had already explored and looted, more importantly, and have basically a wasted adventure. He's like, well, these people just went there yesterday, so there's nothing left. There hasn't been enough time for new monsters to, get into this particular dungeon, or anything like that. So, sorry, there's nothing for you guys to do. So they started off as just a bookkeeping thing, but players started really enjoying reading the player descriptions, and it started becoming its own form of competition. Who could write the most compelling, interesting summary of an adventure? Very similar to how Record of Lodoss War became an anime, and how Call of Cthulhu is the most popular tabletop RPG in Japan. It became that. I can never remember what Record of Lodoss War. Record of Lodoss War. Replay, that's what they were called. So in Japan, they had these things called replays, where people just write up summaries of the adventures, and eventually someone got the idea to start publishing them as light novels. Which, again, if you're not familiar with that term, a light novel is basically halfway between a traditional novel and a manga, where it's written in prose like a regular novel, but it will have illustrations, manga style illustrations, every so often, to kind of help the story go along. So kind of like a chapter book with pictures, kind of, but not intended for kids. So that's effectively what the West Marches benefited from, was from these effectively replays. Players would tell the story of what happened on their adventures in these email chains, and then everybody that was a part of the West Marches campaign would go and be able to read it and get excited that I want to be able to do that, and I want to find cool stuff like that, and maybe I will have a cool adventure like that. And so all of those things combined into a really amazing style of gameplay. And now that we have so many more tools at our disposal, a West Marches campaign nowadays is easier to run than anything else, which is where the announcement aspect of this video comes from. So I normally don't put timestamps in my daily vlogs, because this is meant to be kind of stream of conscious. Again, the purpose of these daily vlogs is actually not to make something that's entertaining. That's a byproduct. The real purpose of them is it gives me structure and allows me to talk, because while I live with my brother, because of my disabilities and anxiety and everything, I don't actually interact with them almost at all. We interact almost exclusively through text messages, because I can't leave my basement room because of my panic disorder. So I don't talk to anyone for weeks at a time, especially if I have to cancel my D&D games. I will not talk to another living human being for weeks. So this allows me to actually use my vocal cords. Anyway, that being said, I will be putting a timestamp in this particular video in case people don't want to hear about my long-winded explanation of West Marches campaigns and the various side stories I told that took over an hour to get through. So, official timestamp is going to be here. Hi! For anyone that came here and skipped right here to hear about the announcement. I have just been talking about the idea of a West Marches campaign, and those of you that have been watching this channel for a little while knows that over a year ago, I guess we're going on a year and a half now, maybe almost 2 years, I had a buddy of mine. He streams on Twitch. He has a really amazing, wonderful community. Started streaming D&D games every so often with his buddies, and the community went, "Oh, I wish I could play D&D," and I went, "You can." "Yeah, but nobody wants to play with me." And he said, "Lots of people want to play with you. What if I set you up a D&D program?" And it went well for about 6 months and then died. And I tried to revitalize it at the beginning of this year, and as of right now, it's just not happening. Nobody's fault. Nobody did anything wrong or anything like that. It's just programs like that take a decent amount of effort to run, and unfortunately, with my health the way it is, I can't do that. And the community itself is right on the edge of being large enough to support a program like that. There's enough players, like I think at one point we had like 16 or 17 players in that group. But as far as people that were actually showing up to game, to play, we might have had like 6 or 7, which isn't enough people to support a group like that. So, my announcement. After talking about West Marches and talking about the idea that I had a little while ago of running a TTRPG group where we play for, we pick a system, we tell all the players about it, they build characters, we run adventures in it for a little bit of time, and then we move on to another system. I have decided that I would like to start my own West Marches campaign with my YouTube community, with the caveat of once it gets big enough. So I'm going to pull the Band-Aid off right now. This is not happening right now. I do not have the audience large enough to support something like this. And I will talk about in a little bit the kind of things that I will look for before I even start doing the prep work to turn this into a real thing. However, I am stating this right now. If this channel gets big enough and the community is active enough, I 100% will create a West Marches campaign that anyone that watches these videos will be able to come into and play and have lots and lots and lots and lots of fun. And the way that it will work, because I've put some effort into figuring out all this, I will create a Discord channel, which is where all of the plans for adventuring will be. There will be the shared map will be there. I have to look into Roll20 to see how many people can fit into a single campaign, because we might just use Roll20 as the quote-unquote shared map, where we just have a single Roll20 page that anyone can kind of log into, kind of make changes on the map and that. Or the other thing we can do is just after every adventure, we can just have them update the map. Like there's a bunch of different ways I know of how to do this, but on this Discord channel there will be a shared map for the West Marches campaign. There will be a channel for adventure summaries, and every single one of the requirements for playing an adventure is somebody in the group has to volunteer to write the summary for that particular adventure and post it to this channel. Any adventure that doesn't have a summary doesn't count, and if people are just constantly doing adventures without actually doing it, we'll have to come up with some sort of punishment for that. I sincerely doubt it would need to be a thing, but every single adventure has to have a summary written by somebody. Doesn't have to be amazing, just has to exist. And yeah, there would be preferably a bunch of GMs that would be able to run games. And the other kind of change compared to specifically the West Marches is there would be seasons, effectively. Can't tell you how long the seasons would run, probably a minimum of 6 months to a year. And basically the thing that would change in seasons is we would change game systems. And at the beginning of every season, I would run a stream either here on YouTube or Twitch, or maybe simulstream. I don't know what would be the easiest way to do it. Right now I'm a little more partial to Twitch because the live chat integration is just better there. But I would run a stream where I would be there and possibly some of the GMs would all be there, and we would build the world map very similar to how Fabula Ultima does it. We would build the world map for that campaign and decide on the kind of tenets of the campaign. Like, this one is going to be a traditional West Marches, so we're at the westernmost settlement of this organization, and everything to the west is wilderness, and then we would create the map. Or, hey, this is going to be a more Dark Sun themed campaign, so we're at an oasis in the middle of a desert, and go for it, or something like that. And we would decide on the system that we're using. We would decide on what books we wouldn't allow right during this thing. We would build the map out and go, okay, you guys can start organizing adventures and expeditions to wherever you want. The earliest the first game can be is this date, to give the GMs plenty of time to prep for anything that they need to, and we would it would effectively be first come for first serve for GM time. So if somebody went, hey, I've got a group of people, we want to play Friday at 7, and the GM is available that time, and then another person, oh, we wanted to play Friday at 7. If there isn't a GM available at that time, then sorry, you got to find a different time when a GM is available. And so that's what I have pledged to do. Now, well, how many people we need to get? My basic idea of what I would need to justify going through the motions, because again, due to my health, I cannot be one of the regular GMs. I can help setting everything up. I've done that before. My body will take that. It really does take a huge toll on my physical and mental health. Like again, when I did the stuff for my streaming buddy, it fucked me up for months. I ran a single game for them, and like I had a week where I had to cancel all my other games and stuff like that because it just ripped me apart so much. So I personally will not be able to be one of the regular GMs. Doesn't mean I'll never run a game, but any game that I run will be kind of a pop-up, random kind of thing. But we will have GMs. It will be player driven. But in order to do that, these are kind of the guidelines I have. The YouTube channel itself, since this is where it's kind of going to be centralized, because this is where most people know me. Minimum, I need at least 2K subscribers, because that means at least 2,000 people have taken the couple of seconds it takes to hit the subscribe button. It doesn't mean that 2,000 people watch my videos, but that would be enough for me to think that we could get, again, a good West Marches campaign is going to have somewhere between 10 to 14 players, and that was having one GM. If I'm going to have multiple GMs, I'm probably going to want in the neighborhood of anywhere between 20 to 50 players. Somewhere in that range. And so in order for me to feel like there are enough people in this community that we could have that many people that are willing to play on a fairly regular basis and have enough GMs for them, around at least minimum 2K subscribers, and my videos would need to be getting at least 100 views on a regular basis. Now, that is not a huge number for YouTube. Any other channel that was gauging if it was doing well gets a lot more than 100 views of video and 2,000 subscribers. So I'm setting the bar intentionally low. But if we look at how I have been going, I have been on YouTube for over a decade. And in over a decade, as of this morning, I had 918 subs. So if we continue that route in the year roughly like 2034, 2035, 2036, I might hit my sub goal. I am kidding about that. I'm not planning on starting a West Marches campaign in 10 years. But if for whatever reason this announcement gets you excited and you like the content that I make and you think that something like that would be really fun and interesting, spread the word about my channel. Get people not only watching the videos but commenting on the videos, because stuff like that actually spreads. And if this community, which I think is a really cool, awesome community, I regularly have wonderful, interesting conversations with people that just stop by because one video looked interesting to them. If we can get enough people like that regularly showing up for my videos, that will justify me taking the physical toll on my body that it will be to build the Discord channel, to set up the rules and everything like that, to get the GMs in place and everything so that something like this can happen. I'm saying right now, as long as there are enough people interested, I am willing to make that sacrifice. And I'm not saying that once it's set up, I'm like, I'm never touching it again. No, I plan to be as involved as my body will let me be. Like I'd like to be able to play with you guys every so often. If it becomes a big enough thing, I might look into what it would take to create like standardized overlays for each season, and either in addition to the summaries or maybe in place of summaries, we could set up a Twitch channel, or probably easier would be a YouTube channel. though to be honest, Twitch is easier to set up than YouTube, where we could just stream the games, that anybody that wanted to see what was going on could just go to this channel. And if I set it up as Twitch, I'd have it linked so that we could just upload it directly to YouTube, so that there would be an archive of it. And so people could see the games that we're playing. Again, if there is interest. All of that stuff takes a decent amount of setup. Once it's set up, again, like I mentioned before, a West Marches campaign can be self-sustaining, but it requires enough people in order to sustain it, and it requires excitement. And if people aren't excited, it's not going to exist. So yeah, like I said, I think this could be fun, and it could be a way for people to try new systems. And it doesn't mean like if we decide that we're going to play Vaesen and you just really, really don't like Vaesen, it's like, oh, I guess I'm never doing this again because they're going to be playing this for the next 2 years. No. If there's a particular season that's not doing super well, we will come up with a reason to end it early, and then we'll start a new season. You know, it's all going to be, and maybe we'll even like vote on the next system or something like that. Like, right now it is in such the early stages, because right now I get maybe a dozen views on like half my videos. Barely make it into double digits, and the few that make it into the hundreds are relatively rare. So there's no possible way that this could become a thing right now. But if this is the catalyst that gets people more interested, then I'm totally willing to say, yeah, get this community big enough. And this is not just subscribe to my channel so I can be real big. No, this is develop the community, not my personal channel. The reason I'm putting the sub goals and the view goals is those are indications of people that are actually interacting in the community. I didn't want to try and put like a comment goal, because that in and of itself is so easy to manipulate. It's crazy. Technically, views and subs are manipulatable as well, but there's less benefit to manipulating that. And again, the goals that I have are very, very low. They're not high enough that anyone, like, the benefit of manipulating them really isn't there. Because let's say somebody does go, I want to do this, and I am going to make sure that there are tons of people that subscribe, and I am going to make 7,000 accounts and like on each one of them. Well, if someone were to do that, which is 100% against TOS, and so I strongly recommend you don't do that. But if somebody did, all that would happen was I would try to set this up, realize that not enough people are interested, and then it wouldn't happen. So I've intentionally set the bar relatively low to disenfranchise people from manipulating it. But the bar is set at a point that I think this could work. So, interested to hearing from you guys. First of all, what are your opinions on West March's campaigns? I personally think they're really interesting. They just take a little bit of work to set up and the right kind of people to be involved. If this is something that interests you, I strongly encourage you, mention something in the comments. A like is nice, but specifically saying, hey, I would totally want to be a part of this is a much bigger deal. And it also, because your username is attached to your comment, it will get other people to start knowing who else in this community is actually invested in this part of the community. And again, I talk about a lot of stuff on this YouTube channel. Most of it is TTRPG focused, but again, I do the business stuff every so often. I do drama stuff every so often, and a lot of my most popular videos are not me talking about game design and stuff like that. They're me talking about the latest nonsense happening about Critical Role or VTubers and stuff like that. So I completely understand this channel and the community around it is not exclusively I want to play various tabletop games. I get that. However, I think enough people exist on YouTube and on the internet that could find this channel that would enjoy something like this. So if you are interested, say something. Not only does it give me a visual representation of people that are actually interested in this, but as one person talks, it encourages other people to talk. It might be that we already have 20 or 30 people that would be interested in something like this, but They think they are the only one because they never see anyone commenting on my videos. And again, this is not me going, comment on my videos because it helps with the algorithm. No, it does. I'm not saying that it won't benefit my channel. But the purpose of this is I'd like to get something like this going. I think it would be fun. Again, I come from running. I got my teeth cut, or I cut my teeth in tabletop RPGs running at friendly local game stores and conventions. I'm used to dealing with strangers showing up at my table and having a great time. A lot of people find that a very odd way to play D&D and TTRPGs in general, because their view is, oh, I get together with my friends and do a very intimate thing with my friends. Like, role-playing can be a very intimate, connecting experience because you are, a lot of times you have you care a lot about the characters that you create, and you share parts of yourself you normally wouldn't share by kind of putting them into your characters, either consciously or subconsciously. So a lot of people think the idea of sitting down with a table of strangers to play a TTRPG is crazy. I'm not one of them. That's how I started. I find playing with the same group of people kind of odd, because the majority of my play experience has been with randos. Even the campaigns that I'm running currently, the people that play in the campaigns, with a few extremely rare exceptions, the first time I met them was when I said, hey, would you be interested in playing D&D with me? I kid you not. It's how I roll. And a lot of them have become my closest friends, but that's how we met, was me just saying, hey, you want to play some D&D? And they were dumb enough to agree. I love all of my friends, and they're all amazing, intelligent people, but it's a weird thing when a random dude in a Twitch chat goes, do you want to play some D&D? And you say yes. So anyway, like I said, interested in hearing you guys. Do you guys want this to be a real thing? I'm not saying right now you need to go out and tell all your friends to watch my videos or anything like that. I'm just saying the people that are already here, that already enjoy the content on this, that already enjoy the different systems, like all the different Essence 20 and Fabula Ultima and Cypher System and Open Legend, all the other stuff I talk about on here. All the people that are already here, if any of you guys are interested, and again, I'm not saying this is happening tomorrow, next week, next month, or anytime this year. I'm just saying, if this community gets big enough, I'm willing to do this if people are interested. If you guys are interested. And like I said, we'll do this in seasons, but I'm not ruling out the idea that we'll run a Power Rangers season where we just have a bunch of people that find morphers or things like that, and we have this kind of international Power Rangers association that just brings together Power Rangers randomly to go on adventures in the universe, and our world map will be a bunch of different planets. Like, I'm totally good with that. Or us all being Transformers, or G.I. Joe is made for West March's campaigns. Like, I'm not saying that this is going to be a D&D and D&D only thing. If Essence 20 is the system that this channel likes, then our first system might be Essence 20 or Fabula Ultima or whatever else. This is not me going, I want to be the most important person and run the games that I want. No, this is me saying I appreciate the people that watch my videos. I think you're all really cool people. And if you guys want to play tabletop RPGs and have similar interests that I do, where you want to play different tabletop RPGs, then I want to make that a reality. So, for the last time, anyone that's interested, say something. Doesn't have to be a lot. Say something. And if you want this to happen sooner rather than later, this is the only time I will ever say this in a daily vlog. Share the message. Tell people, hey, there's this dude with this stutter who's kind of a dipshit, but every so often says some cool stuff, and he's willing to start a D&D group or a TTRPG group where we could actually play on a regular basis. By the way, this will all be done online, more likely than not through Roll20. So Yeah. Who's interested? It's going to be all for me today. See you guys next time. All right. Bye-bye.